I'm group one, joined with Lauren, Pru, and Nick. I think they're somewhere on this grid. I can't find them up. Okay, there's Pru.
I'm here.
And Nick. Okay, we're all here. That's good. So we created a podcast in lieu of doing a kind of formal presentation. I really hope that's going to play for you guys. So what we did is we broke out 4 different episodes. They're quite lengthy. They're each, I think, like a half hour long, so we won't get a chance to listen to the whole thing. But for each of them, we had a guest speaker. Each of us brought in a guest speaker from our company, covering the topic that was pertaining to the episode. So one topic was the difficulty being new in the workplace. We had 2 podcasts on mentorship. Prudhvi, who's at Columbia, has a really great mentorship program. So we got to hear from someone on that end. And then lastly, we focused on building connections as well. Really important on building and maintaining connections. And so we also had someone from Gleeson Powers kind of weigh in on that. I'll let the rest of the group introduce themselves so I kind of get this thing rolling.
All right, well, I'm Lauren, and I work for WT Rich. I'm an assistant project manager there. Before this, I was an attorney. I actually defended architects and engineers in professional liability claims. So kind of did a whole career switch. So I really identified with the being new piece, being new to the industry myself.
Well, I'm Nick Massauro. I work at Gleeson Powers as an assistant estimator. And kind of go off Lauren's thing, I also identify with being new. I'm kind of fresh out of school. So this is my first job in the construction industry.
I'm Prudhvi Jakkam. I help estimation department here at Columbia Constructions. I mostly work on corporate projects. I've been just 1 year old in the construction industry.
Awesome.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to Who's John, a podcast about being new in the workplace. I'm your host, Bill, joined by Lauren, Pru, and Nick. Say hi, everybody.
Hey.
And today we're covering mentorship. What is an effective mentor? What is a overall just good mentor? And I'm super excited because we have a variety of guest speakers today, different backgrounds, and I think that they're really going to share their insight in a positive way, and hopefully we'll all be able to get something away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody can kind of relate to having like a mentor in some way, shape, or form, and whether we know it or not, as you kind of progress throughout your career, you really realize how important it is to have an effective mentor.
Yep. As they say, if you cannot see where you are going, ask someone who has been already there. That's where mentor comes in.
Like that. I think one I'm really excited for too is Pru's mentor in the mentorship program in Columbia.
Yeah, definitely. With that, let's get right into it. We have the privilege of, myself being an architect, Lauren on the contractor side of things. Pru, you're on the contractor side of things too, if I'm not mistaken?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. And then Nick, being the sub, gives us a variety of different perspectives for a variety of workplace settings, how kind of the dynamics are a little bit different. But I think one thing that kind of is continuous in all of those is mentorship. And I guess a question that I'll ask all of you guys is, what is a good mentor? Are there certain qualities you look for in a good mentor?
Well, I'll go first. I think one of the biggest things about being a good mentor is making the time to explain things to who's ever asking the question, like not just brushing it off or thinking, I don't have time to deal with this right now. Why don't you go do like X, Y, and Z? I think it's like actually sitting down and explaining why something is the way that it is, like why we're asking this question, like what is the reasoning behind certain decisions that we make as a company. I think that's just very important. Then I think the second one too is number two is like they're actually knowledgeable in their field and they're really good at their job. So I think it's that they're knowledgeable, but they're also willing to like take the time to impart that knowledge on somebody else, if that makes sense.
What did it do for your learning to do it as a podcast rather than a PowerPoint or a regular presentation? What did it do for what you got out of the work with it?
Oh, I think by doing it a podcast, and I think it was more of a collaboration rather than it being like an individual task or like we were responsible for one portion. It forced us to get together multiple times, and we did just kind of chit chat with each other about our personal experiences. We did meet with the guest speakers, so that was 3 separate occasions. And honestly, meeting with those guest speakers and actually listening to them and hearing a lot of their advice, I thought was extremely valuable.
Yeah. It's clearly just a different kind of learning going on.
Mhm.
A couple of the other people in the group, how would you describe the learning from this as opposed to from the other kinds of conventional presentations? I'm still trying to put my head around it.
I felt great, like such senior people who have been in the industry for, like 10, 20 years, even such people saying things like, even till today, they feel like, they say sometimes they feel not so confident about their work, not every day they're so happy about, how they're delivering at the workplace. And in, such things, made me think like, okay, I'm not alone, there are like senior people who think the same. So it's not me. So it's an unusual thing. I just need to, learn how to work on it. That's the biggest takeaway for me after, like talking with all the people from Nick's company and, like Bill's company and Lawrence.
So Pru, do you think the people would have been as open to you if you had done like a more formal interview, or do you think what do you?
I don't think so, but I mean they all seemed pretty open during the podcast. I don't know, maybe they would talk the same even if it's a formal interview. I'm not sure. But the podcast setting really helped us.
I think that we just had and we really tried to focus on having a good diversity of guest speakers and talk and cover each topic. So for the being new episode, I brought in someone who just graduated last year from Wentworth. And it just so happened that Nick, who's in our group, graduated from Wentworth last year as well. And so they kind of made that connection right off the bat. I hope you're able to explore that conversation just very casually on that episode about, well, his name's Torin. Torin started at a small residential firm and it wasn't the right vibe for him. It wasn't the right fit. So he came here to SGA and now he's liking it much better. Whereas Nick, on the other hand, is at Gleeson Powers, that's relatively small and he kind of thrives in that kind of scenario and that dynamic. So why are the two so different? And we kind of expanded upon that in that episode, and just having that dialogue, or having the podcast format enable us to have that dialogue.
How many of you, show of hands, listen to podcasts of any kind on a semi-regular basis? Just quick show of hands. So a little bit more than half of the group. I've gotten much more regular at just, a couple of times a week. I'll tune into something. It's a whole different medium to fool around with. So I can't wait to hear how you figure out where you're going to post it, and send us the links and we'll put them up on the Building Leader website.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you'll definitely get hits on this because these are all topics people are interested in. And I'm thinking it's, if people are into listening to podcasts at all, they'll definitely tune in and check out the material.
The podcast name is Who's John? Navigating Being New in the Workplace. But where Who's John derived from was there was a 5th person in our group whose name was John, but he didn't have any contact information and we didn't know where he was. So we were like, who's John? But then we also use that as kind of a metaphor for who's John? Who's John, the new guy at the office? And so that's how that kind of just transformed into
That's great.
Who's John,
That's
the
great.
podcast.
I'm glad you told us the story. Tony, did you have other comments or questions?
I guess the other question I would have is what process did you guys use to determine what were the 4 episodes going to be? Were they things of interest to each of you individually, or was there another source of inspiration?
I think we just, so in the beginning when we were trying to determine a first draft, we had kind of just worked on what were going to be the core focuses of our group and what we wanted to get out of a podcast. And we originally, I think up until a couple of days ago, honestly, were under the interpretation that this was just going to be a single podcast. But we quickly realized by the editing and, we really found some really good conversation, not only from our guest speakers, but just amongst the 4 of us, that it would have been a disservice to edit it down. And so we ended up breaking it down into by category. But ultimately, the original goal was to have an introduction, go into being new, mentorship. We were supposed to have a whole thing on covering kind of being introverted, since that's all of our commonalities as well in the group. But it just never kind of formulated that way. And that's how we kind of ended up where we are.
Just the story of how your group worked is a good story in itself.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and thanks for taking on a really new medium and not just doing the kind of the normal. So appreciate that.